If you have a plan for something you want to do, it is important to work on it every day. For instance, if you are trying to lose weight, you can occasionally have a treat. But can you have a full day of treats? No, I don't think that would work. Keep at it every day. Teach yourself new habits that normal people will do automatically. If it takes putting the timer on for 5 minutes to walk around your house, do that. In a week's time, you can increase the time to 8 minutes. These are incremental steps toward the goal of losing weight. The same thing works if you are a writer. It is important to write every day. It doesn't really matter about what. If you are working on a book, then writing that book is important. If you can spend an hour a day writing a book, you could conceivably have a book written in less than a year. A book is about 200,000 words. Does that sound incredible? It's an average. Novels can be 180,000 words. How-to books are less. Here is something to think about. Hold a book in your hand that you read and liked. A book you could see yourself writing someday. Look and see how many pages it has. Now, look and see how many chapters there are. Open it at random, and on the full page you are looking at, count the words on 5 random lines on that page. Now, count the number of lines on the page. Multiply the number of words in a line with the number of lines on the page. I know it is rough, but it just broke a problem the size of Mount Everest down to the size of the hill in your backyard. Repeat this procedure with 2 more pages in the same book. Get an average of how many words there are on each page in this book you've been holding in your hand. The whole exercise is not going to take more than 20 minutes of your time. I did this once with a book I was reading. It worked out to about 10 to 12 words on each line. Figure, on average, there are 22 lines on each page. The lower estimate would be 220 words. This is all going to depend on the margins, the spacing, and the type font size of the book you are basing your estimates on. If you can write for an hour, it proceeds in fits and starts. Many times, I write with my eyes closed. Pretend you are in front of one other person and you are telling a story. On average, 1 page on my computer holds about 500 words. It might take me 10 minutes to fill up a page with words. Again, it depends on what I want to say. If I am uncertain, I don't write as fast, and then my word count goes down, and it could take me an hour to fill up a page. On other days, I could do it in 10 minutes. If you were to write a book, you might first settle upon what you want to write about. Don't think you are an expert. You are an expert on living. You got this far, didn't you? Write about what you know. If you don't know something and want to include it in your book, do some research on the internet. Talk to somebody who knows what you are talking about. Was it gardening? Was it baking something? Was it how to do routine maintenance on your computer or your car? Or was it relationship advice? My own best advice about relationships is to be forgiving and patient. Also, a sense of humor works wonders. Then, you make a list. If it is nonfiction, then start with 10 interesting points about what you are talking about. Just start with that. Believe me, you will discover other points to talk about as you get into the project. You will find chapters that don't have enough material in them that could conceivably be combined with other chapters. Then, you will have chapters that get so large, you realize they really need to be chopped up into 3 different chapters. Here is something I try to do. I try to have my chapters be about the same length. Depending on how much I have to say, I might have them begin at 2,000 words, and then, later on, realize they need to be 3,000 words each. But that is not a hard and fast rule. Rules were made to be broken. It is a guideline. In actuality, my chapters are never the same length. It's just a ballpark figure. I like to start a project with one statement. I get a big piece of paper, and I draw a circle in the middle of it. That's where I put my premise, my statement. Some people call it the snowflake method. Others call it mind mapping. I start drawing lines out of the circle. Here's something that applies. Here's another something that applies. Then, I draw lines off of the lines. Eventually, I have a project, an idea for a book on the floor, or on the kitchen table in front of me. When I go, put it into my computer. With my mind map in place, I write out the premise of the book in a sentence. Just as I drew lines off of my circle, I begin adding sentences to my first sentence until I have about 10 of them. Certainly an arbitrary number, but just how I do it. I take each one of those 10 sentences and I set them aside. Each one of them becomes a chapter. At the end of the project, I might have 30 chapters, but you have to start somewhere, and I always start with 10. Another thing about having a plan, whether it is detailed or short, is that if you get mired down or even bored with what you are working on, you can always jump forward in the book. I did that once with the first book I ever wrote. It's never been published, but I remember about 3/4 of the way through I dreaded writing it. Everything was going according to plan, so I had not written myself into a corner. This also happens when you kill off your best villain, which I also have personal experience with. But this time I was just tired of it all. What did I do? I went and wrote the ending. It was just as I had planned it to be in my outline. I was happy with it, and also revitalized about writing again. I went back to where I had left off and continued writing until I finished the book. Here is the magic thing that happened with the end of that book. I'd written right up to where I had already written the final ending when I got bored. I sat there looking at it. It fit perfectly. The book was done. I deleted the ending. I just trashed some 6,000 words and I wrote them again. I had no plan, but the second ending was better than the first. I actually, for once, had no idea how it was going to end. As I finished it, I was crying. It was that good. Something to help you along would be other people doing the same thing. In the month of November every year, NaNoWriMo.org has a huge write-along for the whole month. NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month. These do not have to be novels. You can have any sort of thing to work on that you want. A script, a how-to book, a travelogue, whatever you want. You start writing on November 1 and try to have 50,000 words written by the end of the month. I've done it several times. In fact, I've been able, in more recent years, to go well beyond the projected number of words. They have other competitions during the year where you can choose your own number of words as your finish line. You do not write against other people. You write against yourself. You have a timeline of a month. I know you can do it. I have. Several times. There is nothing to buy. It is free. As an aside, I have to tell you that National Novel Writing Month started where I live, in the San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley area in Northern California. It was in 1993, and there were less than 20 people who attended. I started doing them in 1995. Then there were about 20,000 people signed up. According to Google, about 500,000 people sign up for the November NaNoWriMo every year. About 10% to 15% finish. I've had my share of interrupted challenges, along with the ones that I've finished. The first one of anything is always the hardest to do. After that, it gets easier. If I decided to write another book tomorrow, I would enjoy the challenge and expect it to be done within a year's time. The original writing of something is usually the fastest. It's when you start editing, which is where I am on all of the books I've written, that things slow way down. But still, if I can write a book, so can you. Another thing I do that has nothing to do with writing, but illustrates the idea that you can get stuff done, is something I invented years ago. I call it the 3-thing rule. If I am going to pick something up in my house, I should pick 2 other things up at the same time. Picking 3 things up and putting them away is not going to wreck your day. It is not going to turn into a 3-hour project. It's just 3 things. The important thing with anything you are trying to do is to do a little bit every day. Think of it as a job that you have. You may already have a full-time job, but this is a job you are doing for yourself. Many of the books I have written were written while I already had a full-time job. The time I found to write, I carved out of my free hours. I would awaken earlier in the morning and write for an hour before I had to get ready to go to work. And I would settle in during the evening to write into the night. Did I know I was going to write this particular piece today? No. I just sat down and started writing. All you have to start with is one sentence. So, I have written about 2,000 words over the last several hours. I didn't have a timer going, but that's about it. If I were to write 2,000 words a day, I might have 60,000 words in a month's time. Then, double that over 2 months. What appears to be a humongous project at first glance is a doable project if you do a little bit of it every day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I had fun writing it. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to this channel, Just Passing Through, to be notified when other videos come out and to help me grow the channel.